The film begins with a man named Frank. He used to be an Air Force officer, and now he works as a driver for shady operations. We learn that Frank is very strict and follows a plan with 3 rules. First rule, he doesn't change any step of the job, even if he's offered extra money. Second rule, be on time. Third rule, he doesn't inspect the goods he transports, and he doesn't care who they're going to or why. Frank is on his way to the city bank to pick up some thieves he agreed to drive after they rob the bank. When he arrives, he presses a button to change the car's license plate, and 4 thieves get in. But Frank refuses to drive because he agreed to transport only 3. The gang leader argues with him and tells him to follow the plan, but Frank says the car won't move because it has a security code, and if it fails, they won't be able to get away. The leader is forced to kill one of the thieves so Frank will drive them away quickly. At that moment, the police arrive and a gun chase starts, but Frank dodges them skillfully. He's a very good driver. The gang is happy with him, but their joy doesn't last because the police surround them from every side. Frank slams the accelerator, jumps off a bridge, and lands on a huge truck that carries the car to another location. Frank succeeds in escaping and delivers them to the agreed place. The leader offers him extra money to take them somewhere else, but Frank refuses and returns the money. The gang takes a taxi and continues on, while Frank presses a button to restore the car's license plate to how it was, then goes home and cleans the car of blood and crime scene traces. It's revealed he has a closet full of license plates with different numbers, which helps him in his work. He sees on TV that the police arrested the gang after the taxi driver caused an accident. A little while later, his neighbor, Officer Turconi, knocks on the door. He looks suspicious about Frank's behavior. Frank seems like a mysterious person. Turconi asks to search the car, and when he inspects it, he doesn't find anything suspicious, so he apologizes and says he'll visit again at a better time. The next day, Frank goes on a new job with another gang, whose leader is a dangerous man. He asks Frank to take a special package to a certain place on the condition that Frank doesn't open the bag. Frank tells him about his 3 rules and confirms he'll follow them. He gets in the car, and the gang places the bag in the trunk. On the way, a tire blows, so Frank stops to change it, but he notices the bag is moving as if someone is inside. He ignores it and continues driving. He stops at a restaurant to rest and feels pity for whoever is in the bag, so he decides to get them a juice. When he opens the bag, he finds a beautiful girl named Lai. Frank tells her not to scream and not to make any moves, and gives her the juice. He drives on, and the road is very long. Suddenly, he hears Lai scream. He stops and tells her not to scream, but she says she needs to use the bathroom. Frank lets her out after tying her hands with a rope he can control remotely, and allows her to enter the woods to go. But Frank notices she takes too long, so he goes to look for her, finds that she ran away, quickly tracks her down, catches her, and brings her back to the car. When they arrive, he finds 2 police officers at the car. When they see him, they realize he is the girl's kidnapper. Frank gets into a fight with them and knocks them unconscious, then continues on his way. When Frank arrives, he meets the gang leader, Street, who suspects Frank opened the bag. Frank confidently tells him his rules, but Street doesn't believe him and orders him to transport another package. Frank agrees, takes the money and the bag, and decides to finish the job that same day so he can rest. On the way, Frank stops at a restaurant for lunch, and when he comes out toward the car, it explodes in front of him. He miraculously survives. He realizes Street sent him a bomb because Street was suspicious of him. Frank returns to Street's house and starts killing the guards there while searching for him. After a long fight, he doesn't find Street in the house, so he goes to the garage and steals a luxury car more expensive than the one that exploded. As soon as he gets in, he finds Lai tied to the rear seat. It's clear she had tried to escape. Frank gets angry and leaves her in the middle of the road, but after a while he feels pity, so he goes back and takes her with him. When he gets home, he unties her hands and prepares lunch for her. Lai is surprised by Frank's kind treatment, even though he had just killed many of Street's guards. Frank tells her he's a thief, but his heart isn't hard. Lai tells him she is very important to Street's gang. Frank replies that he'll think about it after he wakes up because he's had a tough day and wants to rest. A while later, Lai starts searching his house and discovers he used to be a federal officer and a squadron leader, and she sees the medals of honor he received. Then she goes to sleep. At the same time, Street visits one of his men in the hospital, and when the man tells him Frank attacked him, Street is shocked because he thought Frank died in the explosion. Street gets angry and blames the guard for not protecting the house, and he chokes him in the hospital. Before we continue, my channel is still new, so if you liked the content, don't forget to support us with a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a nice comment like you. Thank you. Let's continue. The next day, Frank wakes up to find Lai has made him breakfast and tidied the place. He feels relaxed and happy, sensing she's brought a nice spirit into the house. But at the same time, he's worried about Street's men, who definitely won't leave him alone. Suddenly, his neighbor, Officer Turconi, comes in and sits with them and asks Frank again about his car. Frank replies that it was stolen. But Turconi already knows the car exploded and that 2 police officers died that same day. Frank answers coldly, saying, "I had nothing to do with that." Turconi still looks suspicious, so he asks about Lai and says, "Who is she and why is she staying with you?" Frank replies, "She's my new cook. I'm always busy and don't have time to cook or tidy the house." Turconi asks to see his new car, and when he sees it, he realizes it belongs to the notorious gangster Street. Frank gets nervous and says he bought it from someone he doesn't know, and he files a report about his stolen car. But Turconi says, "Come to my office and I'll file the report for you myself, and don't forget to bring Lai with you." Frank returns home furious, and suddenly a rocket hits the roof. Street's men arrive and open fire. Frank and Lai flee to the basement and escape through the sewers before the final rocket blows the place up. They swim until they reach the sea and manage to get away with minimal losses. They go to an abandoned house in the city and stay there a while. The next day, Frank and Lai go to Turconi's office. Turconi is very puzzled by everything that's happened to Frank and his destroyed home. Frank denies everything and says, "I don't know why this is happening to me." A police officer comes in during the investigation and asks Turconi to sign some important papers. Lai seizes the opportunity, opens Turconi's laptop, and searches until she finds files about Street's cases, learning everything from them, the address of his house and the places he goes. Suddenly, Turconi returns to the office and finds them sitting there as if nothing happened. He lets them leave, saying he'll continue the investigation later. They agree and walk out, but as soon as Turconi checks the computer, he realizes they took important information about Street and decides to watch them. Later, we see Frank walking the street, not sure what to do amid all the trouble. Lai suggests they go after Street and kill him so they can live safely, but Frank rejects the idea, saying Street is a criminal and would surely be prepared for something like that. Lai tells him there's a ship leaving that night, carrying about 400 kidnapped people who will be taken to another country to be enslaved and trafficked. She also says her family is among the people kidnapped on that ship. Frank tells her she's always trying to influence him to get her family back. Lai insists everything she did was real, that she wasn't using him, and her biggest proof is that she didn't turn him over to the police. At that point, Frank trusts her and agrees to go with her to take down Street. When Street returns to his office, he finds Frank and Lai there, pointing a gun at him. Frank orders him to sit in a chair and tells him to explain every detail of what will happen on the ship that night. Street laughed scornfully, saying, "You broke your 3 rules, especially when you opened the bag you promised you'd never open." Then he says Lai tricked him and brought him here because her father is the one responsible for transporting the 400 kidnapped people on the ship. Frank is stunned by what he hears, and before he can talk to Lai, he sees her aiming the gun at him. He asks her to explain, and suddenly her father, Kwai, arrives, confirming to Frank that Lai really did deceive him. But Lai points the gun at her father, clearly trying to expose him, and it's obvious she used Frank to help her. Kwai grabs her roughly and orders his guards to kill Frank. Suddenly, the police arrive with Turconi. Street strikes Frank on the head, knocking him unconscious. When Turconi arrives, Kwai tells him Frank kidnapped his daughter, demanding a large ransom, and that they managed to lure him to this place. Unfortunately, all the evidence ends up against Frank, and Turconi is forced to arrest him. A little while later, Frank wakes up inside the cell, and Turconi comes to talk to him. Frank tells him everything, explaining about the ship carrying the 400 kidnapped people and that Lai tried to expose her father but couldn't. He asks Turconi to get him out immediately, saying the police will be late. Turconi is convinced by his story but doesn't know how to free him. Then Frank gets an idea. He takes Turconi's pistol and pretends in front of the police that he's taken him hostage so he can escape. He actually manages to break free and takes Turconi's car, heading for the ship's location. When he arrives, he takes Turconi out of the car trunk and leaves him there, then boards a small boat to reach the ship's port. That night, Frank reaches the place and sees the containers holding the kidnapped people. He quietly approaches Street's men without anyone noticing. At the same time, Lai sits there sad and not knowing what to do. Suddenly, Kwai comes in and yells at her, ordering his men to take her with them. In that moment, Frank begins attacking the gang members, killing them one after another. Street senses danger and flees quickly with Kwai and the others in cars, taking the containers with the hostages. Frank finishes off the men around him and chases after them. He jumps onto the container holding the people, but the truck driver tries to throw him off, and Frank falls onto a bus. The gang's men catch up to him. A fierce fight breaks out, but with his superb combat skills, Frank defeats them all. More men show up, so Frank pours motor oil on the ground, they slip, and he uses the chance to jump into the sea. They open fire on him, but he miraculously survives. Frank then grabs a weapon from one of them, steals a car from a garage, and starts chasing the gang. The car breaks down halfway, so he's delayed. By chance, he sees a farmer with a small plane and threatens him with the pistol to get a ride. When he spots the gang's cars, he jumps out of the plane with a parachute and lands on a container. He throws his parachute onto one of the gang's cars, causing a huge crash that blocks the whole road. Frank knocks out the driver and tosses him out, but Street jumps into the truck. They struggle until Frank delivers a powerful blow and throws Street out of the truck. Frank stops the truck carrying the victims, but Kwai appears, points a gun at him, and orders him to get down immediately. Frank gets out and walks with him, and Kwai intends to kill him. Before Kwai can pull the trigger, he takes a bullet to the heart and dies. It turns out Lai was the one who shot him to get rid of his evil, but she's left completely shattered by what she did. Frank tries to calm her and reassure her. In the end, the police arrive and free the people in the containers after brave Frank manages to rescue them all. And that's where the film ends. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and tell us which movie you want me to summarize next. See you in the next video. Goodbye!